Ladies, I need you to listen carefully, because what I'm about to reveal can save your heart from heartbreak. There are words a man will say, 6 little words, that might sound innocent, harmless even. But I promise you, when these words come from him, alarm bells should ring. Your intuition matters, your heart deserves the truth, and today, I'm going to show you exactly what to watch for. Because ignorance isn't bliss when it comes to love, it's pain waiting to happen. Ladies, let's talk about the first phrase, the one that can feel harmless, almost casual, but hides a storm underneath. I was just talking to her. On the surface, it sounds innocent, right? Maybe even normal. After all, talking to someone is a part of life. But when these words start creeping into your relationship, when they come with hesitation, defensiveness, or guilt, they're rarely about just talking. And this is where most women get it wrong. They hear the words, they see the tone, they hear the calm in his voice, and they convince themselves it's nothing. But your intuition doesn't lie. Your heart senses when something is off long before your mind wants to admit it. Think about it for a moment. Why does a grown man feel the need to qualify a conversation? Why does he need to explain that it's harmless, almost pleading for you to believe him? A man who is fully present, a man who is fully committed, doesn't need to justify every interaction he has with other women. He doesn't feel compelled to say, "It's nothing, I swear." That kind of language comes from guilt. That kind of language comes from secrecy. That kind of language is a warning sign. And you, my dear, have to learn to hear it. And here's the tricky part, he won't always lie outright. Sometimes it's a half-truth, a story with just enough truth to make you doubt your doubts. Maybe he really was just talking to her, but the way he says it, the tone, the hesitation, the way he avoids eye contact, everything tells you it's not just talking. And you can feel it, can't you? That tiny, nagging voice inside your chest telling you something is wrong. That's your heart protecting you. That's your intuition screaming at you to pay attention before it's too late. Now, I need you to understand something very clearly. Hearing this phrase once might not be enough to confirm anything. Relationships are complex, people are human, mistakes happen. But when you start hearing it often, when it comes up as a defense mechanism again and again, that's when you have to stop making excuses for him. That's when you have to stop convincing yourself that maybe he's innocent, that maybe he's just busy, that maybe he's just friendly. Because at that point, ladies, it's a pattern. And patterns don't lie. Here's another layer. He might use this phrase in a way that makes you feel guilty for asking questions. Why are you upset? It's just talking. Why are you overreacting? That's manipulation. That's gaslighting. He's flipping the script so that you feel like the problem is your concern when the problem is his lack of transparency, and you cannot allow that to happen. You must see it for what it is, a shield, a distraction, a mask to hide the truth. You deserve a man who communicates openly, without hesitation, without excuses, without the need to qualify every interaction he has. A man who is faithful doesn't have to convince you that nothing is happening, because nothing is. A man who is committed doesn't fear your questions, because he has nothing to hide. So when you hear those words, "I was just talking to her," listen closely. Listen to the hesitation, listen to the defensiveness, listen to the story that doesn't quite add up. Don't dismiss it, don't ignore it. Don't tell yourself it's nothing. Pay attention, because those words, when they come wrapped in secrecy and guilt, are the first cracks in the foundation. And if you let them go unchecked, they can grow into a canyon that your heart will have to climb out of later. Remember this, innocence doesn't need excuses, honesty doesn't need defenses, and love doesn't need secrecy. Now let's move to the second phrase, the one that sounds almost like reassurance, almost like he's trying to protect your feelings. It's not what you think. I need you to hear me carefully, because these words are more dangerous than they appear. On the surface, they sound like a calm explanation, a gentle attempt to prevent an argument. But when a man uses this phrase repeatedly, it's rarely about calming your fears. It's about controlling your perception, keeping you from seeing the truth that he doesn't want you to see. Think about it. Why would someone insist with that tone that what you're thinking is wrong? Why not just tell you the truth? Honesty doesn't need to insist. Honesty doesn't need to convince you that your suspicions are unfounded. When a man says, "It's not what you think," and he says it with urgency or defensiveness, what he's really saying is, "I'm hiding something, and I need you to believe me without questioning it." And that, ladies, is a red flag you cannot ignore. Here's the subtle danger of these words. They make you doubt yourself. They make you question your own instincts. You start thinking, maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I am reading too much into it. And that doubt, that's exactly what he wants. He wants you second guessing yourself while he continues to do what he's doing behind your back. And this is where most women get trapped, not because they're naive, but because they trust too much, because they give the benefit of the doubt one too many times. Now, I'm not saying every time a man says this he's cheating. Context matters, human beings are complex, and sometimes misunderstandings happen. But when this phrase becomes a pattern, when it shows up alongside secretive behavior, late night texts, unexplained absences, then it's no longer about misunderstanding, it's about concealment. And concealment in a relationship is a form of betrayal, whether he admits it or not. And let me tell you something else about these words. They carry a weight of manipulation. He's trying to frame the narrative in his favor. He's trying to make you feel foolish for noticing things, for asking questions, for protecting your heart. And when you buy into it, when you let those words cloud your judgment, he gains power. He gains control over what you see, what you know, and what you believe. And the most dangerous part, you start policing yourself, questioning your own perceptions, while he continues to walk freely through a web of dishonesty. You deserve better than that. You deserve a man who trusts you enough to tell the truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable, even when it's inconvenient, even when it exposes his mistakes. A man who loves you doesn't need to convince you that you're wrong. A man who values you doesn't need to manipulate your perception. A man who is faithful doesn't need to cage your thoughts with words like, "It's not what you think." So, ladies, listen carefully to this phrase. Pay attention to the tone, the timing, and the context. Ask yourself, does this feel like protection, or does it feel like deflection? Does it feel like honesty, or does it feel like manipulation? Because your intuition will tell you the truth long before his words ever do. Remember this: love builds trust, honesty builds freedom, and words like, "It's not what you think," are often the first sign that trust is being eroded. Now, let's talk about the third phrase, the one that seems almost innocent at first, but carries a hidden warning. "I don't know what you're talking about." On the surface, it might sound like confusion, maybe even honesty. Maybe he really doesn't understand what you're asking, right? But ladies, pay attention to the pattern, because this phrase can be one of the clearest signs that something is being hidden. It's a line used to deflect responsibility, to avoid accountability, and to protect secrets that he knows you wouldn't approve of. Think about it. Why would a man suddenly have selective memory? Why would he act bewildered, pretending that your questions are foreign to him? When this happens repeatedly, it's not forgetfulness, it's avoidance. It's a way to put you off balance, to make you doubt your own perceptions. You start questioning yourself. Am I imagining things? Did I misunderstand? Maybe I'm overreacting. That doubt, that's exactly what he's counting on. That doubt is what allows deception to take root without confrontation. And here's the critical thing: this phrase is often paired with subtle behaviors that you might overlook if you're not paying attention. A shift in tone, a sudden change in eye contact, a defensiveness that feels out of proportion. All of these are warning signals. They're small, but they're loud if you learn to listen. He's creating distance without saying it outright. He's trying to make you feel uncertain, to make you question your own instincts, while he continues actions that he knows would hurt you if you fully understood them. You see, a man who respects your relationship doesn't need to act confused when confronted with honest questions. He doesn't need to pretend he doesn't understand. He doesn't need to make your heart question itself. A man who is faithful, a man who is emotionally and physically committed, faces your questions with transparency. He answers without hesitation, without guilt, without the need to create confusion. Because honesty doesn't fear scrutiny, truth doesn't hide behind foggy explanations. And here's the subtle danger of this phrase: it shifts the emotional burden onto you. Suddenly, you are the one feeling guilty for asking questions, guilty for seeking clarity, guilty for trusting your own instincts. That is emotional manipulation at its finest. He doesn't need to lie outright, he just needs to make you doubt yourself, make you feel unsure, and eventually make you stop questioning altogether. And once that happens, ladies, he can continue whatever he's doing without interference, without consequence, because you've been conditioned to silence your own intuition. You must remember, your feelings are valid. Your questions are valid. Your need for clarity and honesty is not overreacting. It is self-preservation. When a man says, "I don't know what you're talking about," and you sense the inconsistency, pay attention. Observe the patterns, notice the behaviors that accompany those words, and listen to the small voice in your heart that knows the truth even before the evidence appears. Love is not about confusion. Love is not about manipulation. Love is not about hiding in plain sight behind clever phrases. Love is about transparency, respect, and trust. A man who truly values you will never need to tell you that he doesn't know what you're talking about. He will simply show you, in actions and words, that there is nothing to hide. So when you hear this phrase, don't dismiss it. Don't rationalize it. Don't let it make you doubt yourself. Pay attention, trust your instincts, and remember that clarity is the foundation of any healthy relationship. Now let's move on to the fourth phrase, the one that sounds harmless, even friendly. She's just a friend. At first glance, it seems innocent, right? Who doesn't have friends of the opposite sex? And yes, friendships are normal, they're healthy, they're part of life. But here's the truth you need to understand: when this phrase is repeated in a way that feels defensive, evasive, or secretive, it's rarely just about friendship. It's often a shield, a way to normalize interactions that are crossing boundaries, emotional, sometimes even physical, while keeping you blind to what's really happening. Think about it for a moment. Why does a man feel the need to remind you repeatedly that she's just a friend? Why the insistence? Why the subtle push for you to accept it without question? Because he knows that if you understood the full truth, you wouldn't be okay with it. And this is where the danger lies. When words like this come wrapped in defensiveness, when he expects you to swallow them without scrutiny, it's a clear signal that the friendship he's talking about is not entirely innocent. And here's the thing most women miss: it's not always about what he says, it's about how he behaves. Late night messages, unexplained calls, secrecy about interactions, sudden irritation when you ask questions, all of these are signs that just a friend might not actually mean just a friend. It's the pattern, the subtle shifts, the little inconsistencies that tell the story your heart already suspects. And your intuition, your gut feeling, it knows. It has always known, even if you've tried to ignore it. Now, I'm not saying every man who says, "she's just a friend," is cheating. That would be unfair. But I am saying that when these words are paired with secrecy, defensiveness, or emotional distance, you need to pay attention. Because at that moment, you are not just hearing words. You are seeing a behavior pattern that can erode trust, undermine your confidence, and slowly chip away at the foundation of your relationship. Let me be clear about something else: as the emotional connection is often even more dangerous than a physical one. Sometimes he's not cheating in the traditional sense, but he's investing time, attention, and emotional energy into someone else, creating a bond that belongs to her, not to you. And when he tells you she's just a friend, he's trying to make you believe it's harmless. But your heart senses the truth. Your intuition feels the subtle shifts in attention, the affection, the excitement that should belong to you. And when that energy is diverted elsewhere, it's a betrayal, even if it's invisible at first. And here's the harsh reality: love requires boundaries. Love requires honesty. A man who truly values you doesn't need to reassure you with words like, "She's just a friend." He doesn't need to insist, to qualify, to normalize. He shows you consistently through actions and transparency that you are his priority, that his heart belongs to you, and that no one else holds the space you do. So when you hear these words, listen closely. Observe the behavior behind the words. Notice the patterns. Trust that tiny voice in your chest that says, something isn't right. Because when you start ignoring that voice, when you start convincing yourself it's harmless, that's when the cracks begin to widen. And ladies, heartbreak often follows where trust is broken. Remember, this friendship in a relationship is natural, but secrecy disguised as innocence is not. And a man who is loyal, faithful, and committed proves it with actions, not excuses. Now let's talk about the fifth phrase, the one that often feels subtle, like it's harmless, like it's just about personal space. I need some space. On the surface, it can sound reasonable, even healthy. Everyone needs space sometimes, right? We all need time to ourselves, to breathe, to reflect, to decompress. But here's the truth you need to understand: when these words are said in a relationship, paired with secrecy, defensiveness, or sudden distance, they are often not about breathing room. They are about creating emotional distance for someone else. They are about pulling away so he can hide his actions, his attention, and sometimes even his heart from you. Think about it for a moment. Why would a man suddenly need space without explanation? Why would he avoid conversations, become distant, and make excuses for disappearing emotionally? Because he's shifting his focus somewhere else, somewhere that doesn't include you. And I need you to hear me clearly. Space in a relationship should bring growth, understanding, and connection. Space used to hide, deceive, or cheat is dangerous, and it's a sign that the bond he promised to nurture is weakening. And here's the part many women overlook. It's not just the words themselves, it's the patterns, the timing, the way he behaves while saying them. The late night distractions, the sudden secrecy, the irritability when you ask simple questions, the subtle withdrawal from intimacy. These are the signals. They're loud, even if the words seem small. They are the warning signs your heart has been trying to send you all along. Your intuition knows what's happening before your mind even wants to admit it. And that voice, you cannot ignore it. Now, let's get real about why these words are so powerful. When a man says, "I need some space," it often puts you in a position where you question yourself. You start wondering, am I too demanding? Am I too clingy? Did I push too hard? And that's exactly what he wants. He shifts the guilt onto you while he quietly distances himself emotionally. That's manipulation, plain and simple. And it's a trap that many women fall into because they care, because they love, because they hope the best about someone they trust. But love, real love, doesn't need to manipulate. Love, real love, doesn't hide behind phrases to justify distance. Love, real love, communicates, reassures, and involves you in the life it shares with you. A man who truly values you doesn't need space to escape from honesty. He doesn't need distance to avoid accountability. He doesn't need words like this to keep secrets safe, because his heart is already yours, and his attention doesn't wander. So when you hear these words, pay attention. Notice how they come, how often they appear, and what behavior surrounds them. Ask yourself, is this space healthy, or is it a mask? Is it about clarity, or is it about concealment? Because your heart, your intuition, has been warning you from the very beginning. And the moment you ignore that warning, the trust, the connection, and the love that should have been nurturing your heart start to unravel. Remember, this space in a relationship is meant to strengthen, not to weaken. Distance is healthy when it brings growth, not when it hides the truth. And a man who truly loves, respects, and values you will never need to pull away in secrecy. He will stay present, he will communicate openly, and he will keep you at the center of his heart and his life. Now, let's move to the sixth and final phrase, the one that sounds so harmless it almost lulls you into a false sense of security. Don't worry about it. On the surface, it seems simple, even reassuring. Who doesn't want to hear that in a relationship? Life is complicated. Small things don't matter. Why stress over them? But here's the truth you need to hear, and I want you to listen carefully when these words are said repeatedly, especially in situations where clarity matters. They are often a tool to dismiss your feelings, to silence your questions, and to hide actions he doesn't want you to see. Think about it for a moment. Why would a man tell you not to worry over and over when your concerns are valid? Why would he insist, with a tone meant to calm, when the issue at hand deserves attention? Because what he's really saying is, I don't want you looking too closely. I don't want you noticing what I'm doing. I need this to stay hidden. And ladies, this is the danger. Words that sound gentle can be masks for deception, camouflage for betrayal. And here's the subtle trap of this phrase: it shifts the responsibility onto you. Suddenly, you feel guilty for asking questions, for seeking the truth, for protecting your heart. Don't worry about it, he says, and your instincts that once screamed, something's off, are muffled by the suggestion that you are overreacting. That tiny, nagging voice in your chest begins to fade because you're told not to trust it, to let it go. And that's exactly what he wants, to keep you distracted from the reality he's carefully hiding. But your intuition doesn't lie. Your heart knows when something doesn't feel right. That unease, that subtle tension, it's your inner compass telling you that these words are not harmless. They are a warning. And the pattern is what matters. One time might be innocent. Twice might be a coincidence. But when it becomes a recurring response to your questions, to your concerns, to your attempts to understand your relationship, it's no longer casual. It's a defense mechanism, a wall, a signal that he is keeping something from you. Now, I want you to understand the difference between reassurance and dismissal. Reassurance is open, honest, and addresses your concerns. Dismissal is a brush off, a way to make you doubt the importance of your feelings. A man who truly values you doesn't tell you not to worry. He shows you, he communicates with transparency, and he honors the trust you place in him. He doesn't hide behind convenient phrases that keep you in the dark. And this is where so many women get it wrong. They hear these words and think, maybe I am overreacting, maybe it really is nothing. But that is the trap. Love is not about silencing your concerns. Love is not about comforting you with phrases while hiding the truth. Love is about transparency, respect, and emotional honesty. And when these words are used to dismiss valid concerns, it's a sign that trust is being eroded quietly, one phrase at a time. So, ladies, when you hear, don't worry about it, pay attention. Observe the behaviors that accompany it. Notice the patterns. Trust that voice in your heart that says something isn't right, because your intuition is always right before the evidence arrives. And when you ignore it, when you convince yourself it's nothing, that's when heartbreak finds a way in. Remember this: reassurance comforts, honesty empowers, but dismissal hides the truth. And a man who truly loves, respects, and values you will never need to hide behind the words, "Don't worry about it."